Hello, everyone, and welcome all to WorldGBC's Sustainable and Affordable Housing Report launch. As we join this webinar, please allow me to introduce you to the CEO of the World Green Building Council, Cristina Gamboa.
Hello, everyone. This is Cristina Gamboa, the CEO of the World Green Building Council. Thank you so much for joining us today for the launch of our flagship Sustainable and Affordable Housing Report. The climate emergency we face ties into all aspects of our lives and goes hand in hand with yet another challenge, the global housing crisis. According to UN Habitat, the world needs to build 96,000 new affordable homes every day in order to house the 3 billion people who will need to access adequate housing by 2030. In all geographies of the world, people are facing homelessness, poverty, or living in substandard homes. Those people are at the heart of this flagship report. This report is a call to action for the uptake of sustainable and affordable housing in all global markets and geographies. It challenges widespread perception that affordable and sustainable housing is not a mass market solution. Actually, sustainable homes should be seen as the ultimate investment, protecting the health of the occupant, increasing the property whilst minimizing energy consumption, and optimizing the life cycle of the asset of the house itself. The key theme underpinning this report is therefore that active collaboration across the sector is crucial to encourage best practice. Now, we recognize that there is not one size fits all solution for the industry, of course, and that is demonstrated throughout the report's many case studies from our global network of green building councils. But as the case studies show, the solutions are there. Strategies, policies, and projects are being activated across all regions of the world to address the housing challenge. It's not enough, but we have silver linings. I am grateful to our partners and the 16 Green Building Councils and the Better Places for People program task force who have co-developed their report with us. They have demonstrated that the leadership and pioneering activity is taking place, showing that housing can be affordable, sustainable, and fit for purpose for everyone, everywhere. Together we can do this. We are sending a wake-up call to the industry, we hope. A unified call will do wonders. It will drive the much-needed uptake of sustainable and affordable housing through policy, finance, design, and construction techniques, plus offer grassroots innovations. As the illuminating case studies in the report show, there is clear evidence that rapid progress is already being made to overcome the housing, climate, and health crisis combined. We just need wider uptake to scale the solutions that exist. I'm not denying that the task at hand is not a great one. It certainly is. But as always, WorldGBC's network is optimistic. And I know that as we collaborate on the solutions, and spark consideration of best practices being implemented around the world, then we can get there much faster. Thank you.
Thank you very much to Cristina Gamboa, the CEO of the World Green Building Council, and welcome everyone to today's webinar, the first webinar of 2 for the day, to mark the launch of our Sustainable and Affordable Housing Report. My name is Sarah Kawamura, the Program Coordinator of WorldGBC's Better Places for People Global Program. I will be your host for today, and on behalf of the team at WorldGBC, we are delighted you can join us for our webinar today. In the next hour, we will hear from our expert speakers who will give us an overview of the Sustainable and Affordable Housing Report and also deep dive into topics around how we can make sustainable and affordable housing a reality for all, followed by Q&A and call to action. This whole session is live and interactive, so please do share your questions and comments in the chat box throughout, and take the opportunity to introduce yourselves to the rest of the audience. We will weave in some of your questions into the discussion today and also aim to answer them in the Q&A box. And please note that this session is being recorded. And with that, allow me to begin with a few words on our global network. The WorldGBC Global Network is the world's most influential local, regional, global action network leading the sustainable transformation of the built environment, with over 75 green building councils, more than 60 partners, and over 46,000 members from across 5 regions. Our vision is sustainable and decarbonized built environments for everyone, everywhere. We realize our vision through a strategic focus on 3 systemic areas that we recognize need change: climate action, resources and circularity, and health, equity, and resilience. And these are aligned with the UN Sustainable Development Goals, as well as the Paris Agreement targets. We deliver this systemic change through our 3 dedicated global programs: Advancing Net Zero, Better Places for People, and Circular Built Environment Accelerator. Our webinar for today and the Sustainable and Affordable Housing Report is produced under the Better Places for People global program that is dedicated to human health, equity, and resilience in the built environment. So do check out our work if you're interested in the social side of the built environment. And many thanks to our partners at Bureau Happold and Saint-Gobain for their unwavering support. Here is a quick snapshot of the 34 green building councils from across the 5 regions who sit on our Better Places for People steering committee, accelerating the uptake of healthy, equitable, and resilient built environment on a local and regional level. And with that, I would like to invite Hiba Nazir, a sustainability consultant and board member of the Jordan Green Building Council, to give us an introduction of the report. Hiba is an architect specialized in sustainability and green building design, and alongside being a board member of the Jordan Green Building Council, she is a managing partner at Inside Out Design Studio. She is the head of the Green Building Committee in the Jordanian Engineering Association and a board member of the Energy Conservation Society. It is a pleasure to have you with us here today, Hiba. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Sarah. And thank you for everyone who was in charge and on board of this great and informative report. So we'll start by the presentation. Okay. So over the past years, ourselves at the Jordan Green Building Council, alongside 16 Green Building Council's program partners and knowledge partners, sat on the Better Places for People Housing Task Force to produce the Sustainable and Affordable Housing Report. We collaborated on this work in order to spotlight action from geographies across the WorldGBC's network that are succeeding in working towards sustainable and affordable housing in their communities and cities. So why is this topic so important, and why did we decide to tackle it? So climate change and man-made disasters are damaging cities and homes, displacing communities and resulting in housing inaccessibility for millions of people worldwide. Vulnerability is heightening, impacting livability with severe reduction in people's health, well-being, and quality of life. So comprising over 70% of land use in most cities already, housing is evidently central to future cities and urban development. Housing infrastructure can either continue to exacerbating problems or can be part of the solution. The global building and construction industry needs a monumental shift. So the good news is that the knowledge, tools, techniques, and technologies to allow for the uptake of sustainable and affordable housing already do exist and are being implemented around the world. This report presents a high-level summary of sustainable and affordable housing around the world, profiling challenges facing the housing sector and opportunities available that are driving the uptake of new solutions and approaches, illustrated by local examples documented from within the WorldGBC network. So, what does sustainable and affordable housing mean? So, sustainable and affordable housing should not only capture the monetary value of the housing itself, but also capture the ongoing affordability of living and operational costs criteria of household maintenance, utilities, or location in relation to transport, employment, and services. Through consultation with the Better Places for People Housing Task Force, the WorldGBC's network defines sustainable and affordable housing as resilient housing that is adaptable to climate change, respects and protects the life cycle vision of meeting current and future needs, while encouraging sustainable choices and enhancing quality of life, all within an economically accessible manner. So, continuation of business as usual in the housing sector will lead to dramatic and negative environmental, social, and financial consequences felt by all stakeholders of the built environment. The report includes a business case for making housing sustainable and affordable, including opportunities for action such as increased energy security, reduced carbon emissions and waste, greater resilience and quality of life of population, and risks and risk of inaction, such as risk of stranded assets, environmental degradation, as well as health risks. So the WorldGBC network also concluded that sustainable and affordable housing in any and all geographies must reflect implementation of the following 5 principles with consideration of cross-cutting nature of many of the topics. So these principles are habitability and comfort, which covers topics such as human rights, dignity, and environment; community and connectivity, which covers topics such as inclusive design, transport services, and culture, as well as community; resilience and adaptation to a changing climate, which includes adaptability, nature-based solutions, safety, and disaster resilience; resource efficiency and circularity, which includes net zero, whole life carbon, energy and water efficiency, as well as waste; and finally, economic accessibility, which includes purchase prices and development costs. So the bulk of the report presents a high-level summary of sustainable and affordable housing around the world, illustrated with local examples documented from within the WorldGBC's network. Each regional snapshot includes challenges facing the housing sector, opportunities driving and uptake of sustainable and affordable housing, as well as case studies which include cutting-edge built environment projects demonstrating a commitment towards the right to adequate housing and a sustainable future. There are 18 case studies in total, all within 30% of area median income. So one of the case studies presented is from Jordan, and on behalf of the Jordan Green Building Council, it has been a great pleasure working and contributing to this report. The affordable housing project in Jordan retrofitted 48 homes and built 3 new homes across 5 different districts in Jordan, demonstrating the sustainable housing is affordable with fast payback periods. The project created an opportunity for cohesion between locals and refugees through their engagement and involvement, with notable change in a greener way of thinking within the society. So every case study in this report reflects all 5 principles and of sustainable and affordable housing that we highlighted previously. This project from Jordan achieved great habitability and comfort, including a 10 to 25% increase in mental performance and memory, higher grades in schools and students learning 20 to 26% faster. For community and connectivity, 288 people of low-income households from 5 local communities participated in the project, including women and children. And for resilience and adaptation, the project focused on installing thermal insulations, creating rainwater harvesting and other eco-friendly techniques. Locally sourced materials were used with recycling and upcycling for increased resource efficiency and circularity. And finally, there has been a 60% reduction in monthly electricity costs and 30% reduction in water usage, among others. More details of this case study and 17 others are available in the report. So the challenges faced worldwide are numerous, but there is a growing body of evidence of progress and opportunities seen from around the world. The call to action and recommendation in this report is derived from real-life analysis, best practices, and successful practices and themes that have already been implemented and applied in many countries in the case studies presented in the report. These range from policy change, finance solutions, community participation, and strategies in practice for a sustainable built environment. So I encourage you all to follow the link in the slide or the QR code to read, download, and share the Sustainable and Affordable Housing Report. There are a lot of interactive elements to the report, so make sure to click around, and I hope that you will enjoy it. Thank you so much, everyone, and back to you, Sarah.
Thank you very much, Hiba. It's been fabulous working with you and the team at WorldGBC, and remarkable to see all the progress in Jordan.
That's perfect. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much.
And with that, it's time for our panel discussion. So this is a huge amount. There is a huge amount to discuss here. So please do share your questions with us through the Q&A box, and our moderator will weave it into our conversation. And it's my absolute pleasure to introduce our moderator, Na Ailesia Koinor Metal, a climate and green building lead at REAL. Na is a sustainable development professional with more than 8 years of international development experience in various sectors, including affordable housing financing, economic development, financial inclusion, climate, and education. Joining now on the panel, it is my pleasure to introduce Duncan Price, Sustainability, Climate, and Global Lead at Bureau Happold. Duncan is a chartered engineer and a chartered physicist with over 20 years experience of business leadership in energy, carbon, and sustainability. He has worked with leading UK and international clients to deliver successful policies, strategies, and projects across a wide range of sectors, including social housing, public sector, and finance. Next, we have Sumedha Malviya, Senior Manager with the Energy Program at the World Resources Institute, India. Sumedha leads the work on energy transition in Indian cities and the program's initiative on building energy, understanding residential sector energy use, and conducting research on behavior change interventions in the energy sector. Next, we have Donovan Story, Head of Global Policy and Advisory Services at REAL. Donovan has extensive field and project experience in Africa, Asia, and the Pacific Islands, bringing about change which transform global affordable housing markets through innovative solutions and technologies, including those which create synergies between affordable and climate-smart housing for the bottom 40%. And finally, Georgina Smith, Head of Technical at Green Building Council South Africa. Georgina's role includes driving market transformation through certification and research-related products that drive the property sector to design, build, and operate buildings in a more sustainable way, while providing technical support to all private and public sectors stakeholders engaging with the Green Building Council of South Africa. It is an absolute pleasure to have you all with us today. And now over to you.
Thank you, Sarah. Good morning and welcome to this panel discussion. I am delighted to be your moderator for this morning. I think the World Green Building Council has done such a fantastic job with this report, which obviously challenges the widespread perception that affordable and sustainable housing is not a mass market solution. And as we heard from Christina in her opening remarks, she highlighted that housing can be affordable, sustainable, and fit for purpose. So with that, I look forward to steering an exciting yet thought-provoking discussion and a call to action at the end as we explore how we can make affordable and sustainable housing a reality for all. So with that, if you'd allow me, I would like to start with Duncan. Duncan, how can we make sustainable and affordable housing a reality from all? I think it's important to hear from a private sector's perspective, but of course, looking from a global perspective, including an example from the UK and the work that you do with your clients. Can you give us some insights into how you think we can make sustainable and affordable housing a reality for all?
Thanks, Nah. That's a really good question. I think the first thing to say is that some of the best examples that we see around the world actually have strong partnerships between public, private, and community sectors. And there seems to be three key ingredients. The first is establishing the right regulatory context, so such as national building codes, city planning powers, and public sector land disposals, to really create a level playing field for developers regarding the environmental standards, the social impacts, and the levels of affordable housing to be delivered. And then the next is access to capital. So leveraging the massive growth in private sector impact investment, ESG and green finance to deliver measurable social and economic good alongside public and private infrastructure funds. And then the third element that goes with that is really assessing the long-term value creation and building that into the decision making. So for example, looking at the multiple benefits of deep retrofit or the long-term asset value that can be gained from creating neighborhoods that are a healthy, green, efficient, and resilient. And I think those three ingredients together really set you up for success.
Thank you, Duncan. That was excellent. And I'll move to Samedia. So we've heard from Duncan where he's provided three ingredients on how we can make sustainable and affordable housing a reality from all. Samedia, it'd be great to understand from a global organization's perspective. Can you shed some more light on who the key stakeholders and actors are in this field to help us achieve our goal of making sustainable and affordable housing a reality for all?
Thanks, Na, and thanks, Duncan, for sort of laying the context on the key enablers needed for this transition to sustainable and affordable housing, making that a reality for all. I think Duncan has already mentioned these. I think in my view, the two key actors that we're looking at, of course, is the government, particularly the regional and local governments, since they control the affordability of land. They provide the incentives for development of such projects in partnership with the private sector. And increasingly, we are seeing that historically, they have been doing this more like a trade-off, that you get affordability, but you don't get access to other services. But as this report highlights, the issue of rights of access and the basic principles of affordability that the report alludes to, I think these are very much something that the government needs to start listening to. And it can't be that you get housing, but you will be away from the place of your workplace. So these aspects can't be mutually exclusive. So also, I feel increasingly governments have made affordable housing as a goal, as a target, and that goes into this conversation regarding scale. Now, you mentioned in your opening remarks that it can't be about scale all the time, and that's where you compromise on quality and sustainability in the long run. So we need to change that when it comes to working with the government, educating them that it can't just be all about scale and speed of construction. The next actor that I feel, the second most important actor, I feel, are community actors, because they are the voices of the people. Since we have established that the definition of affordability should not compromise on other basic rights, community involvement becomes extremely important, particularly when we look at the different typologies of housing that communities would like to live in and would like to access. And it can't be just about matchbox style housing that are perceived by many as low value, or give communities that these kinds of housing are not desirable. So I think we have a responsibility of changing that. So in my view, I would stick to these two actors, the government and the community actors.
Excellent, Samedia. Thank you very much for that. So I'll come to you, Donovan. We've heard from Duncan, we've heard from Samedia. They've set the stage. Duncan has talked about we need to set a level playing field. He's talked about the need for access to capital. He's talked about the need to assess long-term value creation. Samedia has explained that we need to get the government listening But of course, it takes a holistic approach where we need the community to also join in as actors. Now, Donovan, it'd be great to get a sense from you in terms of implementing theory into practice. What do you reckon are the steps, or if you can share some of the steps that you're taking to make sustainable and affordable housing a reality for all? But of course, as you provide some context, it'd be great if you could bring in some aspects from the report as well.
Thanks, Na. I think it's starting from the position that not all solutions are going to be the same. And I think Christina sort of laid that nicely in her introduction, that though we can get lost in the big number, the big global number of 1.2 or 1.6 or 1.8 billion, is that there's a whole host of stories and contexts and solutions which are completely different, and that how we got to the housing crisis in different countries provides us very different entry points and opportunities, and we can't continue to make the mistakes of just treating housing solutions as a one-size-fits-all approach. So I think that understanding contexts, understanding where housing solutions in the past have, affordable housing solutions in the past have failed and where they've succeeded is very important. Understanding that contextual market, the sources of the finance that are available, the sources of the finance that are acceptable and affordable for low-income people as well is very important, as well as housing expectations, which can be very different. They can be located in place through upgrading or retrofit, or they may be about finding greenfield sites and solutions there as well. So I think in moving from the theory, if you like, of housing solutions to what's going to work on the ground, it's about understanding that context. It's about understanding the needs, the housing needs of people more clearly, and responding to them more contextually. In some areas, as well as we've learned through the report and through the example, sometimes policy can enable and sometimes policy can impede. So sometimes policy is the right place to start and sometimes it's not necessarily the right place to start. I think for our work then and many others working in affordable housing at the global level, it's about challenging assumptions. It's about thinking about solutions in particular markets and particular contexts. And I think that Duncan raised the issue as well. It's about understanding the actors that are already very active on the ground and sometimes supporting them to scale, learning from them. And I think the report does this really well. The report really highlights actors in the global south themselves and the work that they're doing. And some of this is very, very cutting edge. And I think it's a mistake to come in with outside solutions or assumptions, but sometimes it's about learning about those that are actually doing the really interesting work and working out how best to support them to be able to move to scale and to be able to do what they're doing better. And so I think there are various entry points which are very contextual. And I think the report and its case studies really points to a range of entry points. And some of those entry points should be led by the private sector, some of them by public sector, some of them by other organisations. But I think understanding entry points and the best traction points is really, really critical as well.
Yeah, thanks, Donovan. I couldn't agree more that the case studies really brings out some of the issues that you've mentioned. I really recommend that everyone definitely takes a look at this report. Georgina, you work with the South Africa GBC. You're constantly in the field interacting with actors and players. What progress and solutions are you seeing in your country that is driving the uptake of sustainable and affordable housing?
Thank you, Na, and hi to everybody on the call from Cape Town in South Africa. I think maybe before I answer the question, it's worthwhile kind of zooming down on that context and overview that was provided in in some of the opening remarks around the global housing crisis. We know that within Africa as a continent is going to see the biggest growth in urbanization and population growth. So housing is a central issue, both within South Africa, but obviously within other African countries and a focus point for other African GBCs. South Africa, unfortunately, has a major housing crisis. The last estimate we're sitting at around 2.6 million homes that we need, which roughly translates into about 12 million people who do not have access, to decent housing. To some of the points that have been raised around, the government and having the right policy in place. Unfortunately, some of the government initiatives, although they, are commendable, have not really made a dent into that housing backlog. And so a lot of context, I think, in developing situations need to rely very heavily on market-based solutions. And it's important that we get it right because, as the report kind of highlights, housing has got this trifactor potential because it deals both with environmental issues, but it really also speaks to economic development, but also the health and the well-being of people that are living in these houses, the kind of spaces that young kids in developing countries will do their homework in, the kind of hospitals that are being delivered. So it's really speaking to bigger issues. Sorry, and I know this is Resi only, but so obviously I know the conversation is about solutions and it's about those levers. So from the GBCSA's perspective and from our experience, I can offer some insights, but the list is obviously not exhaustive. There's no silver bullet to this. We need a lot of actors operating at many different scales. I think one of the things that we have seen that is successful is private and public partnerships. So, for example, where government is giving capital to private developers to develop social housing, but then obviously the rentals are capped at certain levels. So we are seeing that come through even within a certified space. So those developers are also pursuing certification. Secondly, I would offer that, particularly maybe more from a sustainability perspective, and less so maybe from an affordable housing perspective, introducing and using a market driver like certification can have an effect. So typically GBCs might have operated in more kind of commercial spaces. We started engaging with the Resi space about 10 years ago, and we introduced Edge, which is an IFC-owned tool. And, it kind of started off very slowly, but we've really seen growth in the last 2 to 3 years. So at the moment, we've got about 10,000 units in South Africa that have been built and that have been delivered to our market that are green and that are sustainable homes. And we've got about 20,000 units that are in the pipeline that will be delivered and built within the next 2 to 3 years. So I appreciate that's not in the million scale, but we are starting to see scale coming through. And the types of sustainability initiatives that would be implemented, we had a look at our data, for this call, particularly more at the lower kind of income group projects, would be things like reduced window to wall ratio. You're looking at proper, good insulation, looking at your hot water, obviously, in terms of solar water heaters, which in South Africa would be a no-brainer, obviously, because of our climate, but I mean, it would work for a lot of other countries as well. Smart meters, lighting. So, it's good, sensible design. It doesn't necessarily need to break the bank. And we have done quite a lot of research around, the perceived myth. And I think that this is one of the things that also needs to be challenged. There's a perception that going green has to cost substantially more. So we've done a lot of research in our commercial market to demonstrate that there is actually no green premium. And the IFC has also done some work on residential to demonstrate that as well. But if you access and you plan your projects properly, you don't need to have a significant premium to go green. Then I think another key lever that we've seen in our market that has been a really successful catalyst, and some of the speakers on the panel, I'm sure, have engaged with this as well, is in 2020. One of our big residential developers who is listed, it's on our Joburg Stock Exchange, Bourne Properties, partnered with one of our big banks to deliver the first green home loan in South Africa. And this has spurred a whole kind of runoff, with all the other banks are now offering green home loan products, both for new builds, but also looking at retrofits and refurbs, within South Africa. So I think that has been a key change as well. I think another key lever or driver is understanding how we limit urban sprawl, and particularly from a private sector investor. So to some of Duncan's points, because obviously investors would be and developers are incentivized to develop on the urban periphery because that is where land is cheap. But for example, in South Africa, where we unfortunately do have cities that allow for urban sprawl, you're having, people spend up to 30% of their household income on transportation, and where mothers are spending, 2 to 3 hours in traffic in the morning and then again in the afternoon because they need to work in the inner city. So by locating residential developments and housing in well-located spaces, not only is there a significant environmental impact, and we actually did a study last year where we looked at Johannesburg, and we showed that we would lock Johannesburg into a carbon trajectory that is 10 times its 2016 trajectory if we carried on developing where we are developing on the urban periphery. But obviously, there's the environmental impact, but in terms of affordability, that time poverty and how it translates into an economic poverty location really is very important for housing. And then I think the last key thing that is important is there are still barriers, and the speakers have raised barriers to access to capital in terms of promoting the uptake of affordable and sustainable housing. And I think where government policy can support developers around this, particularly sometimes in developing contexts where they're also dealing with supply constraints. So that means the developer then also has to take on the cost of energy security and water security, is around offering tax incentives. And we've actually seen one of our local municipalities come out and they are offering property rebates for certified and net zero buildings. It's not only residential, it's across all building typologies. But I think those kind of policy incentives could really support that. So thanks. So those are some of the initiatives that we're seeing, but as I said, it's not an exhaustive list.
Thank you, Georgina, for outlining those examples. Evidently, there's a lot of progress, and that's ongoing, and it's really great to hear. Samadia, if I may, still on the topic of solutions, and was Donovan and Duncan, I'll come to you in a minute to learn more about the barriers and how we should be approaching some of these solutions, whether from a top-down or bottom-up approach. But before then, Samadia, can you throw some more light and provide other examples in terms of the solutions and opportunities of progress? And we'd really like to know, are these across the built environment sector for the increased uptake of sustainable and affordable housing?
Sure, thanks, Na. And I think Georgina spoke, quite a bit about some of these solutions, and we find them to be active in several different geographies as well. I mean, the classic work that is going on is, of course, how do you really reduce the cost of construction by providing access to capital or through non-financial incentives or the financial incentives to private developers. In the Indian context, what we have observed is this huge concern and emphasis on thermal comfort for affordable housing, and the government sort of acknowledging that it is an important right, because India is a hot country, and we will require massive amounts of cooling for not just the other buildings, but specifically for the housing sector. So there is a growing acknowledgement at the government, at the national government scale, particularly on the importance of thermal comfort, and the work that many of the academic institutions and think tanks are really putting their weight behind is coming up with templates for design and construction of these affordable housing projects. And some of them are mass and some of them are not. So we are sort of distinguishing them between both the mass scale housing intervention, but also the ones which are going to be self-built. So there are different design solutions for both these categories of affordable housing projects. So we see a lot of interest as well as technical assistance coming that way to help the government roll out this kind of ambition of thermal comfort in affordable housing, because India has a massive target as far as affordable housing is concerned, and that sort of seeps down to the state level as well. So I think that is one area of solutioning that we are seeing more and more, emphasis on design, more and more emphasis on easy to do solutions, as well as those solutions which are fast to construct, as well as ensure some of these basic principles of thermal comfort and sustainability. We're also observing of solutions and opportunities in rental housing. There is a, the report also talks about it, and I'm glad that it does, because housing does not necessarily mean it has to be owned. And a lot of, I would say more work, needs to be done on understanding how a rental housing can be made sustainable and affordable. There's a huge untapped potential there, I feel, particularly when it comes to local and regional housing programs on rental housing. And these can benefit, especially the local governments can really benefit from technical assistance, because they are going with the status quo and the business as usual. But if we want to change that to sustainability, this will require more work. So there you go, like two major areas that I mentioned about the government emphasis on a specific aspect of sustainability and on rental housing as well.
That's brilliant, Amelia. Thanks for providing that context. I'll come to you, Duncan, now. What do you see as the key barriers preventing the uptake of sustainable and affordable housing? And again, on solutions, what solutions are there to explore?
It's a good question. I think there's still too much short-term thinking with developers focused on upfront capital costs and sales prices, and really not enough examination of long-term operational costs or climate resilience, or the experience of being in the homes that they're creating and the value that that could bring. Part of the solution, I think, is different tenure models, build to rent, shared ownership, and also bringing in long-term patient investment into the social housing infrastructure, especially when backed with strong ESG frameworks that really align social, economic, and environmental objectives. I think that's quite an interesting area where you effectively see institutional investors like pension funds working hand in hand with housing associations to become social enterprises, which is really quite challenging to the existing models. But you kind of get this coming together of objectives, and as long as those objectives are really clear and the outcomes are evident, then I think that's quite an interesting space to look at, where you can really leverage significant investment to deliver social and affordable, sustainable and affordable housing.
Thank you, Duncan. And now to Donovan. So taking a piece of the report, I know you've probably read it cover to cover 10 times already. And what I really want to ask is sustainable and affordable housing really within the reach of all people in every region of the world, from an affordability, access, resource, and financial perspective? And while you think of that within the case studies that have been outlined and detailed in the report, do you think that the change in the global housing market should be top down or bottom up? Because this is something that just keeps coming up all the time.
Thanks, Nat. I mean, in short, no. At the moment, we see a growing gap between housing need and affordable and climate smart housing and sustainable housing. So if we're going to be very blunt about it, we would say that gap is increasing, and we can project that it is going to grow as a problem, particularly in rapidly emerging markets. And it's not even just limited to, if you like, the bottom 20 or bottom 40% of people, but also emerging middle classes that are seeking to escape from absolute poverty as a part of, if you like, a successful global agenda on poverty eradication. It means that people's incomes are increasing, but also their housing expectations are rising, as well as their desire for secure tenure. And we are nowhere near meeting those expectations with the housing stock that is there. And the broader sort of services and infrastructure, including the financial services and infrastructure, is not nearly anywhere near the demand that we're going to see through the next 1 or 2 generations. So if we're going to be really honest, no, we're not in a position to meet affordable and sustainable housing demands. And I guess that's why the report is here, and that's why we're here calling for that urgent attention. I think on the other side of the coin, though, I think that one of the more promising areas, and we're starting to see that through the discussion today in the report, is that in meeting housing needs, we're going beyond housing now. In the past, it was very much locked into housing experts talking with government departments that are just focusing on the provision of housing, and it was a housing problem with a housing solution. What we see in the report is that there's all sorts of elements to inadequate housing. There are issues of urban resilience, there are land tenure systems, there are problems of unbankable cities because of the way that land and infrastructure is disorganized. So urban authorities are not generating the tax revenue and the other forms of revenue they can have by having an orderly housing system and approach. We see projects that need money and money which needs projects, and this chasm between. We see issues of obviously climate change and resilience and adaptation, which we cannot meet those goals, those global goals, with poor quality and unavailable housing. So what we're seeing is that housing, as a, if you like, a crisis, is moving beyond housing discussions and beyond housing experts. And I think that that's a really positive thing. So we're having more people come in from a private sector perspective, from a resilience and sustainability perspective, from obviously a community development and empowerment perspective. We're having more voices now in the housing domain. And I think that's very, very positive because it creates more opportunities. So top down, bottom up, well, it has to be a mixture of both of them, doesn't it? Because at the global level, we need more finance. We need to unlock more finance, including green finance, to be able to tap into to meet our housing solutions. But in reality, the solutions are going to be local. They're going to be locally defined solutions. So we do need a bigger infrastructure, a global infrastructure, which is supportive, I think, of local solutions and local approaches to meeting housing needs.
Thanks, Donovan. And just really quickly, there's a question here so it's from Nigel Banks, and he's asking, I think you, Donovan, specifically. So apparently, Heba Nazar mentioned housing for refugees, and how can we fund and rapidly provide adequate, sustainable and affordable housing for the millions of refugees fleeing war and climate impacts? And could off-site manufactured housing built locally, potentially by refugees, play a part?
Yeah, I'll respond a little bit to Nigel on this. It's not specifically my area, but I do know of fantastic work that's been done in countries such as Jordan, actually, which Heba could probably speak to quite a bit. But I think that this is going to be a critical area going forward. We are going to see, and we have seen over past decades, a growing number of internally displaced people, but also international migrants that are moving into so-called temporary settlements, which in effect become permanent over time. And I think it's very, very important that we take a perspective of that those shelter solutions, which are inclusive of sustainability, of sustainable service provision and infrastructure, which I guess without necessarily building cities, at least is able to build communities, which may be much more than temporary. And I think here there are opportunities for international actors working with, say, UNHCR in terms of planning and solutions. I know that they're looking at more opportunities to engage migrants themselves as critical workers, as artisans, and as solution providers themselves in such settlements. But one thing is for sure, and that is we are going to see much greater mobility and displacement going forward. And we need to ensure that those areas and those communities and those housing solutions which are provided are much more than just poor quality, very temporary, shackle-like structures, and essentially provide much more sustainable solutions going forward. And there are a great number of reports there, and I'm happy to share those as well.
Excellent, thanks, Donovan. There's another question on shifting business models, and it'd be great to hear from everyone. But while you have a quick think about that, Georgina, let me come to you. There's this misconception, obviously, that affordable housing can't be sustainable and it is expensive. And would like to hear from you. What conditions do you think are needed to create a business case for sustainable and affordable housing. And also, it'd be great to get a bit more insight on the overview of the Jewel case study.
Great, thanks, Noam. So, and I think, using Jewel City as an example will be helpful to, to answer that first question around, what are the conditions for creating a business case? So, I think the first point is around understanding, in terms of the business case, that going green does not necessarily have to cost substantially more. If you design things smartly and you intercept or you introduce sustainability principles at the correct stage within the project, and that's obviously as early as possible. But I think, so for the listeners on the call, the case study that is contained within the report from South Africa is called Jewel City. The developer was Diversity Urban Property Group. It's based in Johannesburg. Thanks, yes, I think we've got some pictures as well. It's really an amazing example of urban regeneration. And to Duncan's point, they did acquire, US investment through, private sector investors such as pension funds and, private equity funds. And, in terms of, part of the funding, they had to, overlay and present the financial returns, but overlay those against social and environmental returns. And they were able to demonstrate a market comparative, total return to the investors because they used good design, efficient construction, and then also, good focus on good property management during, many of the buildings are obviously, existing. It's a renewal project. But so this is based downtown in Johannesburg. It was actually part of the old, diamond center. Obviously, South Africa's got a big mining history, and it had kind of, it had moved its functionality. But there are about 1,500 units. But it's not only got resi, it's got retail. There's a school, there's a clinic. And they really focused on immaculate urban realm design to incorporate public art, but to make recreational spaces. We actually hosted an event there about, I think it was last year or the year before. It must have been the year before. So I got to see it in person, and it really has an incredible feel, and it's very pedestrian friendly as well. And I think that, one of the key successes of it was that there's mixed use, and it's obviously very well located. So that has, an attraction for tenants to rent or, to buy property. So I think that, the location element comes in again. And I think that the location element is important. It's a tough nut to crack because of the economics involved in it, within city property prices that are controlled by market forces. So I think, those are some of the elements that have made it successful and have contributed to its business case.
Fantastic. Thank you, Georgina. So as we begin to wrap up, in the interest of time, I'll come to you, Duncan, because I'm really keen to hear from the private sector's point of view. Now, there's a question from our audience, and please keep the questions coming in. How do you shift the business models of housing developers, and what have been successful examples in shifting this short-term thinking to long-term thinking, and when the long-term benefit is not necessarily reaped by the developer? Duncan, can you share some insights into this question?
It's a good question. I think where we've seen it work really well is where the private sector set a really strong corporate strategy, which might have strong environmental, social governance, and really strong ESG strategy that is aligned with a sustainable future. So, for example, some of our clients have set science-based targets, committing to, say, a 50% reduction in embodied carbon of every home that they're building by 2030, right? Or halving the operational energy consumption of every home that they're building. And that corporate strategy really then is hardwired into their brand and their business model right through the organization. And we're seeing that with developer clients everywhere in the world, UK, US, India, China. And then I think focusing on the curation and the curation of long-term successful communities, so both placemaking and placekeeping. And a really good example of that is, again, one of our clients, Related Argent, who are developing the Brent Cross master plan in London, where their whole placemaking strategy is predicated on creating a more healthy environment, and they're backing it up with evidence. So together with the University of Manchester, we're creating a flourishing index and doing a long-term longitudinal study to evidence the before and after, right, to really back this up. And so examples like that, where you're creating real mixed-use sustainable communities built around that sort of 15-minute neighborhood model to really reduce the risk of stranded assets and create this really long-term successful investment in cities for everybody to gain from. So I think some really good examples. Set a corporate strategy, set some goals, bring evidence, and in the long term, you're going to create value for everybody.
Yeah, thank you, Duncan. And if I can, we're wrapping up in 2 minutes. Can I get your 30 seconds closing remarks and call to action? In 30 seconds, Duncan.
I'd say, I think we've got this coalescence of city authorities, investors, developers, and occupiers all heading in the same direction. So I'd say work together, collaboration up and down the value chain is absolutely key.
Awesome, thanks. Working together, collaboration. Samedia, 30 seconds, call to action.
Thanks, Na. I had a brief interruption with my internet, but I think I think all of us have spoken about the role of different actors. I would speak from the perspective of the role of us as a global organization, and we do want to continue doing what we have been doing so far. So our responsibility as far as research is concerned, breaking the myth that sustainable is not affordable, and the fact that we have to continue to provide convening platforms for actors to come and talk about avenues for collaboration, and also look at opportunities to make the so-called pilots work, because I've been hearing more often these days about pilots never fail and pilots never scale. So let's move beyond that thinking and come up with some good research as well as avenues to make it accessible to policymakers.
Thank you, Samedia. Donovan.
I would say to start to think about housing and start to work towards housing solutions which encompass other important elements and other agendas which are now critical to it, whether it be the Sustainable Development Goals, whether it be the Paris Agreement, but to be able to, I think, to encourage people to think beyond housing in terms of meeting people's shelter and housing solutions. And I think to give a final promo for the report itself, there's a great couple of pages, one of them on opportunities for action, and then a counter risks of inaction. And I think this really summarizes the much bigger picture in which our housing solutions must be framed.
Thanks, Donovan. Georgina, let's hear from you. 30 seconds, thank you.
2 points. I'll be quick. The first one, to Duncan's point, collaboration. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go with the team. So it is about collaboration. There's no silver bullet here. We do need to work together as a team. And then I think, to Donovan's point, we're talking about housing, but we're also talking about people's homes. And I think that the impact of a home, and this, that if you translate that into a cost, because obviously everybody always wants, the finances, but you're shaping people's minds. It's health, it's mental health. It's, there's so much around a home and the impact that it has on so many elements. So I think it's about bringing, and understanding those impacts into the long-term costing of the business case for housing. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Georgina. Thank you. You've been such a fantastic panel, and I'll hand back over to Sarah. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you very much for the eye-opening discussion and giving us many different entry points, as you said, of the needs on the ground and solution progresses. Of course, we have many challenges, but understanding the actors that are already active on the ground, as you've mentioned, and projects that are being implemented really gives us that positive push to work harder and together and as a team to make this a reality. So I'd like to thank every one of you for your remarkable work in the field and for the great collaboration we had over the past year on this report. And with that, it's time for us to close our first webinar today. I'd like to thank every single one of you for joining this session, wherever you are in the world. And I hope that hearing from this phenomenal range of speakers has crystallized that urgency and the attainability of sustainable and affordable housing worldwide. Please do read, share, and download the Sustainable and Affordable Housing Report. The link is in the chat box. You can access this through the QR code on the screen or the webpage link. And many thanks again to all the Green Building Councils, partners, and knowledge partners for the in-depth collaboration over the past year. We hope you enjoyed it, and we always welcome your feedback, and please do get in touch. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Cheers.